Senator Shoebridge.
Oh, thanks, Chair, and thanks everyone for your attendance. I have some questions that maybe perhaps Mr Fox might be best placed to answer. And while you're settling down, Mr Fox, then in 2021 DPS was sued by journalist Marcus Reubenstein for, I think it was a vicarious liability claim in relation to a series of publications that were made by a senior researcher, Dr Geoff Wade, while he was working and on the company dime. Do you remember that legal action against DPS?
Stephen Fox, Parliamentary Librarian. Thank you, Senator, for the question. Good morning. I was not in the role in that period. I've been in that role for about 18 months, so it precedes my time as Parliamentary Librarian.
Yep, but my question was, do you remember the litigation against DPS?
No, I do not.
All right. Does anyone have any institutional memory of the proceedings?
I suspect, Senator, that there's no one here that was here at the time, but we can answer your questions that we can answer and take them on notice.
Well, in answers to an earlier round of estimates, it was clear that the then Departmental Secretary, Mr Stefanik, attended the mediation for those proceedings. And indeed, either he or another senior officer was a signatory to a final deed of settlement, which saw the Commonwealth make a significant payment as a result of the actions of Dr Wade. Would you produce to this committee the deed of settlement that was entered into?
I'll take that on notice and consider whether we're able to under the terms of the deed.
Well, I'm not asking about the terms of the deed.
I will take the matter on notice, Senator.
And indeed, if you would know that the terms of the deed could not override parliamentary privilege. You'd know that, wouldn't you?
I completely appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I know that also you wouldn't want me to do something that that was not legally possible for me to do. So I'll take it on notice and see what the terms are, and then I'll come back to you.
I'm just pushing back on your suggestion that if there's something in the deed that says confidentiality, that obviously wouldn't answer the inquiry. To be clear on the same page.
Senator
I take your point. I've taken it on
Ms
notice.
Hinchcliffe understands the powers of this committee, but also that she has the ability to make a public interest immunity claim, should it be in the public interest. But, of course, Senator Shoebridge, please continue.
Thanks, Chair. And just so as we can be clear, was the amount paid in settlement by the Commonwealth to Mr Reubenstein, was it $110,000? Or was it some other amount? If it was another amount, can you please identify the other amount?
And I'll take all of that on notice for you, Senator.
Did that include, and if the amount paid under the deed was a set figure, and if you could provide us with that, were there any other payments made by the Commonwealth, including to their legal costs, and what, if any, legal costs were incurred?
Yeah, I'll take all of that on notice for you.
Were there any restrictions, or was there any action taken against Dr Wade for costing the Commonwealth more than $100,000 because of the actions he undertook while he was working for the Commonwealth? Was any action taken against Dr Wade?
Senator, I'll have to take that on notice.
All right. And I'm sorry, Mr Fox, when did you say you commenced?
18th September 2023.
All right. So in November 2023,
David on the list.
I understand a series of questions were put to DPS by an independent media outlet asking if they're aware that Dr Wade was engaging in further social media commentary during work hours on X under the pseudonym Matzella Mera. Now, you were the parliamentary librarian at the time. Do you remember those inquiries being directed?
I recall the inquiries, but they were made to the Secretary at the time, Mr Stefanik.
Was any investigation done as to whether or not, in fact, Dr Wade was, during work hours, using that X account?
I'll need to take that on notice because that was handled by the Office of the Secretary at the time. So Mr Stefanik was the officer who had the questions directed at him.
Well, but can you just clarify whether or not between Mr Stefanik and Dr Wade, you as a parliamentary librarian, are you in the intermediate management chain? Does it go from...
Yes, I am, yeah.
And are you saying you weren't in any way involved in that?
I was not.
That would seem peculiar, wouldn't it? The Secretary engages directly with somebody in your employ in the Parliamentary Library and you're totally unaware of it.
That was the arrangement that was possibly, and I'm speculating here, possibly because of the previous issues that were around that you've been asking questions about.
Why are you speculating its relation to previous issues?
Because
Did you have some
I can't
knowledge?
speak for Mr Stefanik's reason for handling that matter, apart from the fact that the questions were directed to him.
Well, you see, that ex-account engages in did engage in quite aggressive political commentary, aggressive political attacks, and it was happening during work hours. Was any action taken against Dr Wade in relation to, again, doing that?
Stephen, do you mind me to jump
Sure.
in? Good morning, Senator. My name's Nicola Hinder. I'm the Acting Deputy Secretary and also the Chief Operating Officer, so I have the HR portfolio within my remit. I'm very happy to be able to take that question on notice. I understand that there was some consideration, but as to what that consideration was, what that actually found, I'm not aware, but I'm very willing to take that back on notice and come back to you.
So was HR involved in the investigation? Well, sorry, was there an investigation following that questioning in November of 2023?
Senator, to be absolutely confident about my response, I'd like to take that on notice. I am aware that HR has had some involvement, but what that involvement was and what that constituted, I'd like to be able to confirm.
All right, so we're left in a somewhat uncomfortable situation where we have the whole of the senior management team of the department here, and nobody can answer whether or not an HR investigation was undertaken in relation to a senior researcher for questions that were asked in November of 2023. This does seem, given the number of people we have here, and I could name them all, no one can shed any light on this.
Senator Shoebridge, that's a little unfair because the officers have indicated to you they were not the officers at the time.
That's
so
not true.
they are doing their best
That's
to
not
assist
true.
and they've taken it on notice.
But President, that's not true. Mr Fox was the parliamentary librarian at the
And
time.
he's indicated to you the matter was handled by the former secretary. Ms Hinchcliffe's taken the matter on notice, as has Ms Hinder. It is unfair to make that accusation that somehow they have knowledge of this event.
I didn't make that accusation.
I
You're
think
making that
that's what you're
accusation.
implying.
If you wish to make that accusation, you're entitled
Senator
to, President.
Shoebridge,
I didn't make that
they have indicated
accusation.
they were not the officers
And you
at the
mischaracterised
time.
their evidence.
I'm not. You mischaracterised it, Senator
you put words in my mouth and you mischaracterised
mischaracterised it.
It's unhelpful when you do that.
And you're being unhelpful
By asking questions.
making that sweeping
President is
generalisation
answering
that
the
somehow
question.
these officers should know something that happened before they were there.
To be clear, I don't know if you heard Mr Fox's evidence, President. Did you hear Mr Fox's evidence that he was the parliamentary
I did indeed,
librarian?
and he said it was
Would you let me
handled
finish
by
my
the
question?
former secretary.
Would you please let me finish my question? Did you hear Mr Fox's evidence that he was the parliamentary librarian and he had managerial oversight of Dr Wade at the time the questions were directed?
I heard the whole of his evidence,
Excellent.
which was that the former secretary dealt with this matter.
Was any disciplinary action taken against Dr Wade as a result of, again, his inappropriate use of X?
So, Senator, I'm very happy to include that as part of my response when I come back to you.
Has Dr Wade informed the department that he's now commenced his own litigation against a series of media outlets? Has he informed you of that fact?
Senator, we are aware that there has been private proceedings that have been launched.
Has Dr Wade informed you that it's likely to involve significant engagement about his work and his activities at work, which may well involve yet more Commonwealth resources? Has he informed you of that?
Senator, at the moment, my understanding of that is that the private legal matter has just commenced. We have not yet had an understanding as to what, if any, departmental involvement or information might be required. But we are very aware that there is a private matter that has been launched.
There's an obligation, isn't there, if people are working for DPS, to be mindful of potential conflicts of interest and to advise their employer of potential conflicts of interest. Has Dr Wade advised the DPS that these proceedings may amount to a conflict of interest, as they will inevitably traverse his work as a parliamentary librarian?
Senator, as the Acting Secretary has indicated, we are paying very close attention to conflict of interest across the department at the moment. I personally have not cited Mr Wade's conflict, but I'll do so and then come back to the committee.
Well, you say his conflict, so has he?
If there is a potential conflict that has been identified by Mr Wade.
So you're not aware if he has, just to be clear? Is that true?
Senator, what I'm saying is I have not cited his conflict. I'm not saying whether or not he has or has not declared one.
All right. There is an obligation, though, isn't there, to, as soon as you're aware of a potential conflict, to notify your employer of it?
Senator, there's an obligation on all DPS staff to be mindful of their personal and work interactions and to declare possible or potential conflicts as they arise.
All right. So if you would, on notice, provide any such conflict, notice of conflict to the committee, indicate, well, if one has been made, and indicate on what date any such conflict was made.
Happy to take that on notice, Senator.
And just so as there's absolutely unambiguous, can whoever is in a position in DPS to answer this advise if there was an investigation of the ex-account Matt Salametta, whether or not Dr Wade confirmed he was the author of or the owner of such account?
Happy to take that again on notice, Senator.
And if there was an investigation of the Twitter account, what, if any, conclusions were made in relation to that investigation?
Happy to take that on notice again, Senator.
I understand it was deleted a few days after the queries were made to DPS. And again, if the investigation hit a blank wall because it was deleted, whether or not any actions were taken against Dr Wade for deleting an obviously necessary source of information for an investigation by HR.
I'll take that again on notice,
All right,
Senator.
thank you.
Senator Hume.